Isometric RPGs always scratch a very specific itch for me, tactical thinking mixed with great storytelling. I've spent hours diving into the isometric RPGs available on PS5, experimenting, failing, and coming back stronger. Now I'm putting them all into a tier list based on my personal journey with them. Let's get into it. Cult of the Lamb surprised me with how fun its mix of dungeon crawling and base building turned out to be. I spent just as much time fighting through quick 10-minute runs as I did taking care of my growing cult, cleaning messes, unlocking buildings, and trying to keep everyone happy. The combat is simple but satisfying. The art style is adorable and creepy at the same time, and the world is full of small activities that kept me entertained until the credits rolled. It doesn't have a lot of long-term replay value for me, but the whole journey was creative and memorable. That's why I'm placing Cult of the Lamb in the great tier. Warhammer 40,000 Rogue Trader pulled me in with its huge world, deep writing, and tactical combat, and I loved the idea of playing as a powerful noble instead of a simple adventurer. But the longer I played, the more the problems showed. The systems are extremely crunchy, the learning curve is heavy, and the game is filled with bugs, everything from broken abilities to quests getting stuck. The story and companions kept me going, and there are moments that feel truly epic, but the technical issues and uneven pacing made the whole experience harder to enjoy. So for me, Rogue Trader comfortably lands in the mediocre tier. When I played Bastion, I didn't expect it to grab me the way it did. At first, it looked like a simple action RPG, but the more I explored, the more the game opened up. The narrator reacting to everything I did made the whole journey feel personal, and the art and music made every level look and sound beautiful. What really hooked me was how much freedom I had with weapons, upgrades, and difficulty tweaks. Every run felt different and kept me curious about what was coming next. Even after finishing the story, I jumped straight into New Game Plus because I just wanted more. For me, Bastion easily lands in the excellent tier. Jumping into Divinity Original Sin 2 felt like stepping into one of the most creative and reactive RPG worlds I've ever played. The writing is sharp, the characters are unpredictable in the best way, and the combat constantly forced me to plan, adapt, and use every trick the game allowed. I loved how my choices genuinely changed scenes, quests, and even how my own party behaved. It's tough, messy at times, but incredibly rewarding once you find your rhythm. For my tier list, this one easily rises all the way to the masterpiece spot. Children of Morta surprised me with how quickly it pulled me into the Bergson family's fight against the corruption. Switching between different family members, learning their styles, and seeing new story moments unlock between runs kept me hooked the whole way through. The combat feels fun, the upgrades matter, and the narration brings real warmth to every attempt, even when the roguelite difficulty kicks in. For my list, this one earns its place in the great tier. Path of Exile 2 quickly impressed me with how fun and challenging it already is. Even in this early version, the big skill tree, tough bosses, and constant build changing made every fight feel exciting. The world looks great, the combat feels strong, and the amount of choice you get in your character is huge. There are only a few acts right now, but you can already see how big this game will become. I'm placing Path of Exile 2 inches the great tier. Hades hooked me from the very first run. Every time I fought through the underworld, the fast combat, the tight dodges, and the crazy god powers made the whole game feel fresh. I loved how each attempt felt different, and even when I died, it never felt like failure. It felt like progress, because the characters reacted to everything I did. Meeting the gods, upgrading builds, and trying new weapons kept me going for hours without getting bored. It's one of those games where just one more run turns into 5 more. I'm placing Hades firmly in the masterpiece tier. Curse of the Dead Gods surprised me with how intense and strategic its combat feels from the very first run. I loved how every room forced me to make quick choices, spending gold or blood, staying in the light or fighting in the dark, pushing forward or playing safe to avoid another curse. The stamina system kept me thinking, the traps and enemies hit hard, and each temple felt different enough to keep the challenge fresh. It doesn't focus much on story, but the action is strong enough that I didn't mind. For my list, I'm placing Curse of the Dead Gods in the good tier. Pathfinder. Wrath of the Righteous immediately impressed me with its huge scope and deep character creation, giving me a ton of freedom before the adventure even started. The main story around the World Wound pulled me in, and I enjoyed building my party, learning their personalities, and seeing how my choices shaped the journey. Combat felt best in real time, and even though the Crusade system and a few bugs slowed things down at times, the game stayed engaging all the way through. I'm placing this game in the Great tier. Tunic surprised me in the best way. It looks cute and friendly on the surface, but once I started playing, I realized how tough and smart the game really is. I loved figuring things out on my own, using the mysterious manual pages, and slowly understanding how the world works. The combat kept me alert, the puzzles constantly challenged me, and returning to old areas with new knowledge felt amazing. Even though the story didn't hit me as hard, the overall adventure was memorable from start to finish. I'm placing Tunic in the Great tier. Hades 2 surprised me with how boldly it expands on the first game, while still feeling familiar in all the right ways. Playing as Melano made the combat feel fresh, and learning the new systems like magic, arcana cards, and alchemy kept every run interesting and different. The world is darker, the bosses hit harder, and the art and music somehow look and sound even better than before. I love discovering new weapons, meeting the new gods, and adjusting my playstyle as the difficulty ramped up. After many hours, it's clear this sequel doesn't just add more content, it evolves everything. For me, Hades Decade earns a solid spot in the Great tier. Jumping back into the Ascent reminded me why this cyberpunk shooter first grabbed my attention. The world looks incredible, and the combat can be a lot of fun, especially with friends. But even with all that style, I still ran into the same issues as before. Long stretches of slow walking between missions, uneven difficulty spikes, and some odd AI moments that break the flow. The shooting feels good when everything clicks, and the PS5 version runs smoothly, but there isn't much here that truly improves the experience. Still, as a co-op game, it has its moments and delivers some enjoyable chaos. Overall, I feel it fits comfortably into the good tier. Disco Elysium, the final cut, is one of the most unusual and brilliant RPG experiences I've ever played. It throws you into the mind of a broken detective and lets every choice, success, and failure shape who you become. And that freedom makes the story feel incredibly personal. The writing is sharp, the characters are unforgettable, and the mix of comedy, heartbreak, and politics constantly kept me thinking about what kind of person I wanted to be. Even simple decisions can send the story in surprising directions, and that's what makes it so special to me. For me, this one easily earns a spot in the masterpiece tier. Path of Exile hooked me right away with its dark atmosphere and brutal enemy designs, and I quickly realized this game leans hard into old-school ARPG chaos in the best way. Fighting huge swarms, sorting through mountains of loot, and experimenting with the massive skill tree always felt rewarding, even when the game threw uneven difficulty or the occasional rough moment my way. The gem-based ability system is still one of the coolest things in the genre, and building weird, broken setups became half the fun for me. The fact that all of this comes in a free-to-play package is honestly wild. In my ranking, this one comfortably lands in the excellent tier. Pillars of Eternity pulled me in fast with how deep and unpredictable its world feels. I loved meeting so many characters with their own stories, and using my Watcher ability to read souls always made even small quests feel interesting. The game does ask you to read a lot and think carefully before choosing anything, but that's part of what makes the journey feel so personal. The combat can be tough and needs a lot of pausing, but winning those battles always felt satisfying. Even with some slow moments and older-style visuals, the writing and world-building kept me hooked the whole time. I'd place Pillars of Eternity comfortably in the good tier. Baldur's Gate 3 amazed me with how huge, detailed, and reactive its world feels. Every time I talked to someone or explored a new area, it felt like the game had a unique path waiting just for me. The writing, the companions, and the freedom to solve problems in so many creative ways constantly pulled me in. I won't lie, the combat pushed me hard and I relied on quick saves more than I expected, but the challenge made every victory feel earned. What really stayed with me were the tough choices, the surprising consequences, and the moments where the story truly felt alive around me. For me, Baldur's Gate 3 easily belongs in the masterpiece tier. Hyperlight Drifter left me torn. I loved the gorgeous world, the moody atmosphere, and the fast, stylish combat, but the game often felt unclear and confusing in ways that slowed me down more than they excited me. The story barely explains itself. The map and objectives are hard to read, and the difficulty spikes pushed me from challenged to frustrated pretty fast. When the action flows, it feels amazing, but getting there takes patience that not everyone will enjoy. In the end, I'd still place Hyperlight Drifter in the mediocre tier for me. Unicorn Overlord grabbed me at first with its beautiful art, fun strategy battles, and a world full of characters that really stand out. I liked how the story is told in small moments instead of long lore dumps, and the freedom to move around the map kept things fresh. But after a while, the pacing felt uneven. The side conversations were hit or miss, and managing so many units became more tiring than exciting. Even though there are some great ideas here, the experience didn't fully click for me. So for my own list, I dropped Unicorn Overlord into the mediocre tier. Diablo II Resurrected still hits the nostalgia bone hard for me. The new graphics and sound make those old demon-smashing runs feel fresh, and switching between classic and updated visuals is a joy. The core gameplay is exactly what I loved. Loot, build choices, and tight combat that feels rewarding with friends. But some old frustrations remain: slow movement, dated systems, and long-standing bugs that should have been fixed. Still, I had a great time sinking hours into it, and on my list it sits in the excellent tier. Death's Door really surprised me with how polished and satisfying it felt from start to finish. The mix of quick, clean combat and clever Zelda-style puzzles kept me hooked, and the world itself has this quiet, melancholic charm that made me want to explore every corner. I loved chasing secrets, figuring out shortcuts, and tackling bosses that actually tested my timing and focus. Even after finishing the main story, I found myself going back just to uncover more hidden paths. Because of how consistently fun and well-made it is, I'm placing Death's Door firmly in the excellent tier. XCOM 2 War of the Chosen pulled me right back in by shaking up everything I thought I already mastered. The new mission types, dangerous enemies, and the unpredictable Chosen constantly forced me to rethink my tactics instead of relying on old habits. I loved how every fight felt different, and the new factions, covert actions, and soldier bonds added way more depth to the overall strategy layer. Even after so many hours, the game still managed to surprise me and keep the tension high. With how much fresher and more exciting it makes the whole experience, I'm rating War of the Chosen firmly as an excellent pick. I had a really good time with Marvel's Midnight Suns because the combat instantly grabbed me. The game makes me feel like a real superhero as I smash enemies into walls and pull off wild team-up moves. The card-based combat kept me thinking each turn, and building decks for Spider-Man, Iron Man, and my own Hunter felt smart and rewarding. The Abby and friendship tasks sometimes slowed things down and felt a bit much, but they did make my squad stronger later on. Overall, this is a fresh and enjoyable superhero RPG, and I'm placing Midnight Suns in the great tier. When I think back on Wasteland 3, the first thing that hits me is how cold and hostile Colorado feels, and how every choice I made seemed to carry real weight. I kept running into moments where I had to pick between two bad outcomes, and the game never let me forget what those decisions cost later. The combat felt tense but rewarding, especially when I used the environment or lined up the perfect big hit to turn a losing fight around. Even the weird humor and bizarre factions made the world feel unique, and exploring the frozen map always led to some strange surprise. Overall, Wasteland 3 stood out as one of the strongest isometric RPGs I've played, and for this video, it earns a spot high up in the excellent tier. When I jumped into Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire, the first thing that grabbed me was the setting. Instead of the usual medieval forests and castles, I was sailing across bright islands, dealing with pirates, gods, and storms. I loved exploring the Deadfire because every place felt different, and the story and party conversations kept pulling me in. Combat felt familiar but smoother, and the game let me pause and think through each fight, which helped a lot. Even the ship battles, done in a storybook style, added something new. The only part that slowed me down was a late game section that felt a bit grindy, but overall, I still had a great time traveling, talking, and fighting across the archipelago. I'd place this one firmly in the great tier. Jumping back into Diablo IV felt surprisingly fun after all the big improvements the game has had over time. I loved diving into the darker story again, chasing Neyrelle and dealing with new threats while wandering through the jungle areas of Nahantu, even if the biome didn't feel completely new. The pacing stayed fast, the world looked sharp, and the new Spiritborn class stood out the most for me. It's fast, creative, and really changed how I approached combat. I also enjoyed the better loot, smoother progression, and the new activities that made the grind feel more rewarding. A few systems still need polish, but overall Diablo IV kept me hooked from start to finish. I'm placing this one solidly in the great tier. Tactics Ogre. Reborn reminded me why classic tactical RPGs still hit so hard. Jumping into its war-torn world, I enjoyed leading my squad through tough battles, experimenting with classes, and figuring out smart moves on the grid. The rewind system helped me correct bad choices, and the floating buff cards added a fun layer of strategy that kept every fight interesting. Even though the visuals look old school, the gameplay is rich, deep, and still incredibly satisfying. I loved how many paths and decisions the story offered too. With everything it brings to the table, I feel confident placing Tactics Ogre Reborn in the excellent tier.